Ghost in the Shell, the legendary Japanese multimedia franchise by Masamune Shirow. Originally a cyberpunk manga published in 1989, then succeeded by 2 manga sequels, and eventually a 1995 feature-length anime film. Regarded as being far ahead of its time due to its thematic resonance with its exploration of identity, and the moralities and ethics regarding the human race's relations with technology, and the blurring of the line between the natural and the artificial, and how that line is blurred through the drastic and once unprecedented incorporation of technology into human life, whether we retain our identities after that integration, or exchange them for entirely new ones. I don't need to go into too much detail about the franchise because everyone and their grandmother is familiar with it by now. Alongside the likes of Cowboy Bebop, Lupin III, Pokemon, Sailor Moon, Macross, Dragon Ball, and Akira, Ghost in the Shell played a tremendous role in shaping perceptions of anime in the Western world. The way it was back then was that anime had a prestige to it that came with its nigh inaccessibility and the exclusivity of its appeal. You had to go well off the beaten track to get your hands on anime back then, and when you did, the reception towards you amongst your circle of friends was impacted tremendously. You would be the cool kid in the block, plain and simple. But simultaneously, you either understood anime or you didn't. In my case, being a Filipino and all, and having lived in my home country for most of my life, access to anime came as easy as access to public toilets, and I don't know why I used that particular analogy. Yeah. But yeah, that's one of the many perks of the long-running Japan-Philippines relations. As far as Ghost in the Shell is concerned, it's one of my all-time favorites, but oddly enough, I'm not like other people who hold it in high regard. I say this because although I might have grown up with it, the standalone complex anime series to be specific, and dabbled in it back when I was 11 or 12 years old, it wasn't until I was much older that I truly appreciated it. And going further than that, it wasn't until a few days ago, actually, that I first watched the 1995 anime film. I can safely say that to this day, prototypical 1990s screenwriting and voice acting aside, it mostly holds up. Its style is one that has influenced a great number of present and future filmmakers, like the Wachowskis, James Cameron, and Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg! Imagine that, being able to influence an already influential man in Hollywood. That should serve as a testament to the legacy that the franchise has left in its wake. But the topic of today's video is not the legendary anime film from 1995. It's the recently released live-action adaptation, courtesy of 5 different production companies: DreamWorks Pictures, Reliance Entertainment, Arid Productions, Shanghai Film Group, and Huahua Media, and presented by Paramount Pictures. I think everyone knows about the controversy circulating this movie, which stems from the decision to cast Scarlett Johansson as Major Motoko Kusanagi. I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said, but I will provide my input at the tail end of this review. For now, let's talk about the movie itself. Beware of the spoilers. The plot of the live-action Ghost in the Shell movie is almost identical to the plot of the 1995 anime movie, barring a few changes. The not-so-distant future has seen significant breakthroughs in the field of cybernetics. Humans may now enhance or fully replace their bodies with cybernetic parts, and the human mind may now be housed in a state-of-the-art piece of equipment that enables them nigh unlimited access to a multitude of networks, including the internet itself. The Major is the pinnacle of this advancement, embodying both the natural and artificial worlds through her existence, an almost perfect being, in a sense. But not everything is smooth sailing, as a conspiracy behind the world's leading figure in cybernetics aims to put a lid under vital information that would otherwise affect public perception on cybernetics. Taking action against this conspiracy is Public Security Sector 9, the intelligence department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications in Japan. The Major is tasked with putting a halt to the conspiracy, and is aided by her colleagues Bato, Togusa, Ishikawa, Saito, and her commanding officer, Chief Daisuke Aramaki. The changes from the original movie range from minuscule to significant. The manufacturer is now called Hankai Robotics instead of Mechatech Body. The Major's initial name is Mira Killian, which I honestly misheard as Mary, as a potential affectionate nod to Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, the voice actress for the Major in Standalone Complex. Bato does not have his pair of cyber eyes at the start of the movie. Aramaki is the only character in the movie who speaks Japanese, and the antagonist, whose name here is Hideo Kuze and not the Puppet Master, although his role is still similar, has a more personal connection to the Major than the Puppet Master did. That's quite a number of changes if I say so myself. The important question though is it a good adaptation? Yes it is. It is not a spectacular feat in cinema, but it is still serviceable, easily the best Western adaptation of an anime manga franchise, although several people would like to argue that it's not saying much. First off, the set design courtesy of Avi Arad is very well done. The combination of live action and computer-generated imagery is pleasing to the eye, and sets that futuristic vibe that isn't far removed from the source material. The difference between this movie and the anime movie is that here there's a dystopic, rustic feel to it, whereas it didn't exist at all in the original. I think it works out in the movie's attempt to show the volatility of the matters at hand, to show that level of disconnect between the natural and artificial that still remains. For individual scenes in the movie, I found a few of them to be exceptional, like the reimagining of the scene of Motoko's birth from the anime movie. Of course, the portrayal of nudity is not as overt here as it is in the anime because it's live action, and it doesn't have the appropriate rating for that sort of content. Another scene is when Bato and Motoko raid a nightclub and Bato has to use the bathroom during the mission, and in that bathroom he notices a female cyborg using the urinal next to him. I didn't stutter. That actually happened. And it was all show, no tell. There was zero dialogue throughout that scene, and it was brilliant. The confusion in Bato's eyes, and the pervasive awkward feeling, they do all of the talking in that one scene. And on the more lighthearted end of things is when Bato gets his cybernetic eyes transplanted into him, and Motoko walks by and flips the bird at him while he tests his new eyes out. Small comedic moments like that always make a difference, and preserves a sense of humanity in an otherwise somber story. Thematically, the movie is also sound, although its exploration of the franchise's principal themes is not as thorough as the anime movie. That's because, once again, there's more showing than telling here. In the original anime movie, Motoko, Bato, Togusa, Chief Aramaki, they're all actively having discourses about these themes. And because the characters in the live-action movie don't harp on these themes as much as their anime counterparts do, there's a little less importance placed in these themes. The thematic exploration of the movie is at least backed up by solid performances from the cast. Scarlett Johansson takes the material she's provided with and works it as best as she can. The typical narrow emotional range from ScarJo may be a constant turnoff for most moviegoers, and it's no different here for some people, but given that Motoko was rather stoic in her initial portrayals, ScarJo's deliveries here still work fine. Now as for what I didn't like about the movie, one of them is a complaint that other people have, but I will elaborate on it. For how revolutionary the source material was during its time, you'd expect the live-action movie to somehow replicate that charm. People say that the live-action movie is derivative, and I have to agree with them. The original Ghost in the Shell movie had a good amount of action to it, but it didn't use action genre staples, nor was there any need for them. The live-action movie has these action genre cliches up the wazoo. Slow motion, drawn-out firefights, car chases, dynamic camera work, explosions, you name it. Don't be mistaken. The movie is derivative, not in its concept, but in its execution. It looks pretty, I will say that, but I've seen a lot of this stuff before in other movies. For a source material that didn't need any of these cliches, it's baffling that its adaptation felt the need to be heavily actionized to grip its audience. Another aspect of the movie I didn't really dislike but feel could have been done better, and this one is a big spoiler, so be careful, is the really weak catalyst just before the climax, where Motoko discovers what her past was really like. It feels so contrived. The way Motoko conveniently ends up where she has to be and learns about her life before her rebirth as a cyborg. The movie just gives you the explanation on a silver platter in such a haphazard and unsatisfying manner. Yes, there were 2 to 3 clues beforehand that teased a different side to Motoko, but that isn't a strong enough bridge between Motoko's reflections and her subsequent discovery. And the fact that the person that she speaks with during that scene spontaneously declares that Motoko reminds her of her deceased daughter makes it feel all the more contrived. Like, lady, this is the first time you've seen this person. How can you be sure that she resembles your dead little girl, or better yet, is your dead little girl? It doesn't work. It could have worked, but with the way it was executed, it just doesn't. And it only serves to give the people who are already pissed off about the whitewashing claims reason to be even more pissed off. And now we come to what I'm certain will be the meat and potatoes for some of you, which is the whitewashing of Major Motoko Kusanagi. And I boldly believe that these claims don't have that good a foundation to support them. Identity is one of the principal themes of Ghost in the Shell, and by itself, it's a very broad concept. Many factors, both biological and socially constructed, constitute a person's identity. Race, ethnicity, sex, gender, occupation, heritage, lifestyle, just to name a few. Ghost in the Shell does not tackle identity in a broad manner, but instead through these different individual branches. I am not one of those people who have a problem with the casting choice of Scarlett Johansson. As someone who has invested himself in the source material and understands it, the casting choice was inconsequential to the enjoyment that I derived from the movie, and if anything, it coincides with the source material quite soundly. Even though Motoko in the original movie is generally acclimated to her own identity, she still had her moments where she questioned it, and whether or not she would lose who she truly was inside. And if we're going to go by physical appearance alone, the source material never clarified what race her body was supposed to resemble. Even then, the individual attributes of her body hinted against it being that of a typical Japanese person. Japanese people rarely if ever have blue eyes like Motoko does, and although the same can be said for any other race, Japanese people sure as shit do not have blue hair. With this combination of features, one might be led to believe that Motoko's body is that of a Caucasian person, but even then, there is no concrete explanation of this in the manga, the anime films, or the anime series. The other point I want to clarify is the differing attitudes towards the casting decision in both the East and the West. With the warmer reception towards ScarJo in the franchise's native home of Japan, which by the way includes Mamoru Oshii, the director of both the 1995 and 2004 anime films, and its mixed to harsh reception in the Western world, it's got me thinking that Japan shares the same attitudes that I have in that, so long as ScarJo is a strong on-screen presence, then her race shouldn't be that big a deal. I also find it ironic that Westerners are the ones who are openly vocal with the outrage that is ScarJo as the major, which has led me to believe the big importance that millennials put on identity and representation. And given the age that we currently live in, where technology is so widespread and creates a wide range of identity-centered discourses, I can understand why the detractors are so up in arms about this issue. I also can't help this nagging feeling in the back of my head that, amidst the reasonable if not valid arguments these people make, there are a few skeptics here and there fighting battles that they don't know how to fight. People that take a stand solely based on the fact that this is a Western adaptation of a Japanese multimedia franchise, as opposed to having any prior knowledge of the franchise in question. It's both funny and sad that I see Westerners playing the devil's advocate on behalf of racial and ethnic groups that they are not part of, and may not even have the proper foresight on. Remember what happened with Moana? How a good number of the critics who decried its merchandise's cultural appropriation were not of Polynesian descent, while the reception from critics of Polynesian descent was mixed at best? That was not a pretty point in a year that was shitty enough in its own right. Equally funny is a seeming lack of advocacy when Caucasian-inspired works are misportrayed. An obvious and recent example of this is the upcoming live-action adaptation of Fullmetal Alchemist, which features an all-Japanese cast and headed by a Japanese director. Mind you that Fullmetal Alchemist is heavily inspired by European culture, even going so far as having a Führer as one of its characters. Not that the trailers reflect that, what with its cosplay-esque character designs. So if Westerners can advocate for a different racial or ethnic group, then they can also advocate for themselves, right? Right? They should, if they want to waste the time and energy that they do. The point that I'm trying to get across is that noble causes aside, when you go into a crusade of this grand a scale, foresight is still required. Perspective is still required. Research is still required. Not to an ostensible degree, but at least substantial enough. Otherwise, you'll only end up as if you're beating a hollow drum, and the sound you make will be recognized only as white noise. This also extends to any critic out there, especially to any critic out there. Think about it this way. Would I have talked about Mickey Mouse as extensively as I did if I wasn't as immersed as I am in him and in his animated shorts? No, it's that simple. It's all about foresight. It's all about perspective. With all this being said, what score am I going to give Ghost in the Shell the live-action movie? A 3 out of 5. It is not a fantastic movie, but it is not a bad movie either. It has its visuals, its acting, and its adherence to the source material going for it, but the derivative touches hold it back a few notches. The film's weaker plot points were also a turnoff, and don't lend themselves to a satisfying resolution. Imperfect as it is, and given the general difficulty of creating a Western interpretation of anime and manga themes, Ghost in the Shell is a step in the right direction. It's a far cry from the heaping piles of trash called Speed Racer and Dragon Ball Evolution. Seriously, how fried does your brain have to be for you to cast someone like Justin Chatwin to play Goku? What in the blue hell, Hollywood? No, 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 no. Get some water, Martin. You're better than that. Now, breathe in, breathe out. There we go. That's the ticket.